Well, I spent a lot of time in Washington, and I hate to admit it, but I was a registered lobbyist and spent a lot of time on the Hill and working, one-on-one with the members. One of the first things I learned in Washington is you can't beat something with nothing. No matter how much you dislike something, no matter how much you badger it, beat it up, trash it, etc., you can't get rid of it unless you have something to replace it. So, is there a potential for a very rapid, complete collapse of confidence in the dollar? Yes, that potential is there, but it won't come into play unless there's something to replace the dollar. Now let's think about what that is. It's not going to be the euro or the yen, and there's all the major currencies, major reserve currencies. Swiss franc, Aussie dollar, Canadian dollar have slices, sterling, etc. They're all but they're like passengers in a lifeboat. And they don't have much food and water in the middle of the ocean, but they're in the same lifeboat. So you can go around and say, well, this guy's a little taller or she's a little smarter or whatever, but they're in the same boat. They're going to sink or swim together. So you're not going to have a world where suddenly people are dumping the dollar. Hey, get me those euros. I can't wait. Because the euro and the dollar, the cross rate, they're in this together. And forget the yuan. There's no secret plan to make the yuan the global reserve currency. I could give you it would take 15 minutes to list all the reasons why that won't happen. But you can't. By the way, a reserve currency is not a reserve currency in isolation. It's not like you have a whole bunch of dollars on pallets in the basement of your central bank. It's a numeraire. It's the way you denominate the assets you invest in. What you need are not dollars. You need dollar-denominated assets, primarily U.S. Treasuries. But the point is, you can't have a reserve currency unless you have a bond market, because you need something to invest in. Well, what do you need for a bond market? Well, why don't we start with the rule of law? You don't have that in China or Russia. You need repos, you need forwards, you need when-issued trading, you need primary dealers, you need a clearance system. You need so much stuff that took us, by the way, decades to evolve, and it's still evolving, that there's nothing close to replacing the dollar among fiat currencies. So what are the two candidates? Well, there are only two. One is gold, and I'm not forecasting a gold standard. I am forecasting much higher gold prices. But if you want to go back to a gold standard, like a real one, and I talked to Paul Volcker about this, and he concurred, you're talking $15,000, $20,000 an ounce. You can do it, but that's the implied non-deflationary price based on gold supply and money supply. But that's where you have to go if you want to do that. If you want to use gold as a reference, okay, but again, you're going to need some kind of open market operations. The other candidate is the special drawing right, the SDR. And this is what China has its sights on. China knows the yuan's not ready and won't be ready. But the SDR is sort of extraterritorial. They're printed by the IMF. So how would you make the SDR the global reserve currency? Well, the first thing you would do is increase your voice inside the IMF, which is exactly what China's doing. They take things, Chinese take things from the inside out. They're like termites. How did they take over the World Health Organization? From the inside out, by getting the leadership. How are they stealing intellectual property from U.S. universities? Getting their graduate students and their professors. A lot of whom are being led away in handcuffs these days because, Trump's finally pushing back on this stuff, et cetera. So worm your way into the IMF, get a larger voice, and recruit some allies, and then promote the SDR. Now, where it gets really interesting is, and it'll all be digital. I think Bitcoin and stuff like that are junk, but it doesn't mean you can't have a digital cryptocurrency if it's the SDR. I always say the dollar is the most successful digital cryptocurrency ever, because they, what you have in your wallet and papers is trivial compared to the digital dollar. But would you have a digital gold-backed SDR?
Yeah.
Or an SDR anchored to gold? Because the IMF actually has 2,000 tons of gold. They don't like to advertise that, but they do. And they could acquire more. And by the way, SDRs can be printed at will, subject to executive board approval in the IMF. And the distribution is not limited to the member countries. Again, I'm enough of a geek. I've actually read the Articles of Association. They can give SDRs to multilateral organizations such as the United Nations. So we have a world where there's sort of a gold-linked digital SDR printed, handed to the United Nations to finance a global climate change agenda. Yeah, that's not a stretch. So that's what you have to look out for. But what I tell the Treasury when they ask, the Treasury very